Good morning. I am very happy to be with you today in this session on PIDs and metadata, although unfortunately only online. But I hope to contribute something from the perspective of the Barcelona Declaration on Open Research Information. And specifically, I want to touch on the importance of PIDs and metadata for Diamond Open Access. When we talk about metadata, we talk about different types of information. Bibliographic metadata, but also metadata for other types of research output, including research software, research data, including information about funding and grants, and also including information about research organizations and contributors. So who is doing the research? And why is this information so important, including for Diamond Open Access? It is this information that's being used in decision-making around strategic priorities, distribution of resources, evaluation of researchers and institutions. It's also used to assess the effect of policies by funders, institutions, and governments, and that can include policies on open access, or on funding distribution. And importantly, it's also used for discovery. It's used by researchers and societal stakeholders to find and assess research results. So what does that mean for researchers? This is about where information about your research output and activities is located and who around the world can find and use the information. It's also about what types of research output and impact are used in assessment and evaluation, and how open and transparent that research assessment is, and how open the information it is on which it's based. And finally, it's also about who owns and controls research information. So in this context, including Diamond Open Access and articles in Diamond Open Access journals in this ecosystem of open research information, and to allow it to be used for all these purposes that are just outlined, is very important for Diamond Open Access journals to be visible. And I want to stress very clearly that this is not about Scopus and Web of Science, or at least not just about Scopus and Web of Science. It's particularly about the visibility of Diamond Open Access journals in other infrastructures, other search engines, and to be able, therefore, to make it more accessible to the wider research community, and also to include Diamond Open Access journals in, for instance, research assessment. So for that, the importance of an integrated open research information system, I think, is essential. And that brings me to just some examples that I've shown on this slide of elements of such an open research information system. We've got, for instance, the PKP journals using the Open Journal system that, as you can see, they are used widely across the world, really globally. They're often not included in the traditional search engines, but they're increasingly getting included in more open bibliographic systems, including, for instance, OpenAlex. Then there are also locally, the example from Latin America, examples of publishing and indexing journals, so local infrastructure, including for repositories through La Referencia, whom you've heard about earlier in this session. And then the last example is an initiative to map Diamond Open Access journals across the African continent, to make, again, Diamond Open Access journals visible that are often not included in more traditional closed systems. So for such an integrated open research information system, there are two things I think that are very important, and they're very closely connected to the topic of today's workshop. And first of it is the article identifiers, so DOIs, but also going beyond DOIs. And then secondly, the value of associated metadata. So it's not just about article identifiers, it's really also about the metadata associated to them. And to illustrate this, a few images to really make clear that to be able to use open research informations in the ways that are outlined, is important to also to not just know about the articles that they exist, but also know about the authors, the authorships, the institutions, the funders that fund the research. And together, this is a network of information that can be used for different purposes. So again, to highlight why metadata themselves are so important, not just the identifiers, not just the DOIs, but also the associated metadata. They really add to the value of research information. And we know that there are systems, global systems, for both identifiers, but also to capture the metadata associated with the identifiers, Crossref and DataCite for DOIs, ORCID for researchers, ROR for funders and institutions, and they really contribute to this open information system. But they're not the whole story. And one of the things we are hearing again and again, specifically from also countries in the Global South, is the importance for diversity in this context. Not just maybe expecting everyone to use DOIs, although there's great value in DOIs. And I want to refer to Cora's talk before me, who really also addressed this, but also to acknowledge that there are other systems that are using, for instance, other identifiers like arcs, like handles, and it's very important to see how they can be integrated. And just two examples of that. One example of the Digital Object Container Identifier, an initiative from the African PIT Alliance, who are trying to develop a system where multiple different identifiers for individual research outputs, including DOIs, but also other identifiers, can be linked together in a way that really does justice to both local context and also different types of research outputs and different identifiers. And the second example, you've already heard from Lautaro about La Referencia and the way they use the ARC as an identifier and the way they also try to improve the metadata associated with those identifiers. I want to turn for a second, really put the focus on India and give an example of how of metadata associated with journal articles, and look at journals in India that use Open Journal System. For this, we use the dataset from PKP, who has a dataset of all the journals that use OJS, and from there we can see that there are currently close to 2,000 journals from India using OJS, of which over 1,400 have an ISSN, and of those over 1,000, just over 1,000 use Crossref DOIs. Contrasting this with the number of journals from India in the ORJ, we see that this is considerably more. So you're already looking at a wider group of journals. And then also to mention that this also shows that not all journals, OJS journals, are using Crossref DOIs, but a considerable portion does. And for these journals, because Crossref is an open infrastructure that can be very easily queried, you can very easily get aggregated information about the metadata that these journals supply to Crossref. And there you see, it's a little bit of a complicated graph, but basically what it shows you is for different types of metadata, so abstracts, affiliations, references, funders, ORCIDs, and licenses, what percentage of journals have that type of information included in Crossref. So you can see that across the journals, abstracts are quite well covered, and a lot of journals have abstracts, supply abstracts to Crossref. Other types of metadata like affiliations, references, or funders, this is less, but there's still examples for each of those types of metadata of journals that can actually supply that kind of metadata. So this really speaks, first of all, to the possibility of supplying that metadata and that that's actually used, so those metadata are being made available. but also the difference among journals. And that some journals are able to do this well, some publishers are able to do this well. For other publishers, it's much more of a challenge. And I think that ties in quite nicely to the discussion you are going to have in the breakout sessions in this workshop. And for that, I'd just like to summarize a few points. First of all, for increasing the visibility of Diamond Open Access journals, both PIDs identifiers are important, but also metadata associated with those identifiers and the fact that those metadata are openly available. The benefits of both centralized and decentralized systems, and I think it's very important to have a discussion how they can both be integrated, how there's interoperability between these different systems to connect metadata across systems. And finally, I'd like to stress that this is also very much an issue of capacity building, both at publisher level as well as at system level, to enable the availability of metadata and to increase the use of those metadata. And with that, I'd like to end this part of the presentation. I hope you will have a very useful and fruitful discussion afterwards, and I hope to be able to join that discussion live at the end of this session. Thank you very much.